piece of shit, this bastard, took the lives of 17 people.
With Attorney Satz, and I watched you kill my daughter on video. And unfortunately, I saw you killing many of the others as well.
These teenage mass shooters shatter our sense of safety, leaving parents terrified for their children's well-being, along with their own, and forcing us to question everything. Witness teenage mass shooters receiving the most terrifying sentences. How do these teens react when the hammer of justice comes down? Let's find out.
17 medical examiners testified about what your bullets did to our children's bodies.
In 2018, the community of Parkland, Florida was rocked by a shocking act of violence. The Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School shooting left 17 people dead and countless others traumatized. Nicholas Cruz, the perpetrator, became a household name, sparking a fierce debate about gun control and mental health issues. Nicholas Cruz, born on September 24, 1998, was a troubled teenager with a history of disciplinary problems and mental health issues. He had a history of violent outbursts and had previously been expelled from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School for disciplinary reasons. In February 2017, Nicholas Cruz purchased a Smith & Wesson M&P 15 assault-style rifle, which was used in the school shooting. He also had in his possession several additional firearms, including a shotgun and a handgun. It was obvious to anyone who looked at Nicholas's social media account that he was a deeply troubled young man. Nicholas shared his extremist views and wrote about his admiration for mass murderers like Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, who committed the Columbine massacre. On February 14, 2018, Nicholas Cruz arrived at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School wearing a gas mask and carrying a backpack filled with ammunition. Armed with the Smith & Wesson M&P 15 rifle, he entered the building and proceeded to open fire on students and teachers. The shooting lasted for approximately 6 minutes, causing widespread panic and chaos within the school. Nicholas Cruz managed to kill 17 people and wounded more than a dozen others before he fled the scene. The victims were primarily students and teachers, ranging in age from 14 to 49 years old. Law enforcement agencies immediately launched an extensive investigation to determine the identity of the shooter. They analyzed security camera footage, interviewed witnesses, and scoured social media platforms for any leads. Within hours, they had identified Nicholas Cruz as the shooter and initiated an intense search to track him down. After the shooting, Nicholas Cruz was arrested and arraigned on 17 counts of first-degree murder. He was placed under 24-hour watch while in custody to ensure his safety. In the following months, additional charges were brought against him, including multiple counts of attempted murder. These charges stemmed from injuries sustained by individuals who were shot at but survived the incident. In July 2022, the trial of Nicholas Cruz began. The prosecution presented evidence showing that Nicholas Cruz had committed the mass shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, fully aware of his actions. They argued that he had carefully planned and executed the deadly attack. The defense presented mitigating factors that aimed to persuade the jury to find Nicholas Cruz not guilty or opt for a lesser sentence. They highlighted his brain damage and other disabilities, arguing that these factors influenced his decision-making and lessened his culpability. After weeks of intense deliberation, the jurors returned with a verdict. They found Nicholas Cruz guilty on all counts. Jurors were uncertain if the mitigating factors presented by the defense outweighed the severity of the crime committed. As a result, they recommended a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole instead of the death penalty. In November 2022, Nicholas Cruz was formally sentenced to 34 consecutive sentences, one for each of the victims he murdered and wounded. During Nicholas Cruz's trial for the massacre at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, several victim impact statements were read aloud in court. These statements offered a glimpse into the pain, suffering, and profound impact that the school shooting had on the victims and their families.
I always have PTSD, depression, anxiety, suicidal ideations. Speaking of suicide, 3 students killed themselves because of what you did.
As we all know, the worst punishment in the state of Florida is the death penalty. How much worse would the crime have to be to warrant the death penalty?
As a teacher, I'm faced with making sure my classroom doors are secured and locked. I promised my learners that I will stand in front of them should something occur.
The chilling reality is that Nicholas Cruz is far from the only teenage mass shooter who has caused harm and devastation. In fact, the upcoming case is even more disturbing as it involves multiple teen shooters instead of one.
The defense painted Devin Erickson as a vulnerable child who got roped into Alec McKinney's plan.
He's not a monster, he's not a demon, and he's not evil.
The STEM school Highlands Ranch shooting was a school shooting that occurred on May 7, 2019, at STEM School Highlands Ranch in Highlands Ranch, Colorado. The incident resulted in the deaths of one student and injured 8 others. Alec McKinney and Devin Erickson, the shooters, were students at the school. On the day of the shooting, 16-year-old Alec McKinney and 18-year-old Devin Erickson arrived at STEM School Highlands Ranch with firearms concealed beneath their trench coats. They proceeded to walk towards a school entrance, where they opened fire on a group of students. Chaos erupted as students and teachers ran for their lives, seeking shelter and trying to escape the gunfire. After the shooting, once the suspects were located, they were promptly arrested and taken into custody. Alex McKinney and Devin Erickson faced multiple charges related to their involvement in the shooting. These charges included first-degree murder, attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and illegal possession of firearms. Devin Erickson pleaded not guilty to the charges against him, while Alec McKinney decided to plead guilty to all 17 charges against him in a plea bargain. Alec agreed to testify against Devin at his trial as part of the deal. In May 2021, Devin went on trial. According to Devin's attorneys, he was not a monster, but a confused teenager. However, Alec took the stand as a prosecution witness and claimed that he and Devin had planned the mass shooting at their school for weeks before they committed the deadly act. Despite Devin's defense, he was found guilty on all charges and sentenced to life in prison plus an additional 1,282 years. Unlike the previous 2 teen shooters, whose motives were unclear, Peyton Gendron's actions were driven by hatred and his warped ideology.
There is no place for you or your ignorant, hateful, and evil ideologies in a civilized society. You will never see the light of day as a free man ever again.
In 2022, Peyton Gendron, an 18-year-old, carried out a tragic mass shooting in Buffalo, New York. This incident was yet another reminder of the devastating impact of gun violence on society. The shooting was motivated by hatred and was live-streamed on social media. Peyton Gendron entered the supermarket armed with a semi-automatic rifle and tactical gear, targeting patrons who were primarily African American. His motive was rooted in hatred and ideologies. He published a 180-page manifesto online, outlining his plans and expressing his belief in the replacement theory, a far-right conspiracy theory. When Peyton Gendron arrived at the Tops Friendly Market in the predominantly black neighborhood of Buffalo around 2:30 p.m., he began shooting customers both inside and outside the store. Police were alerted to the attack by an armed security guard who was shot in the encounter but survived. Upon the arrival of law enforcement, Peyton surrendered to authorities without resistance. He was charged with first-degree murder. The authorities examined Peyton Gendron's social media accounts and online activity. According to reports, he had frequented online forums known for promoting hate. It is believed that Peyton was radicalized through these online platforms, which contributed to his motivation for the attack. Peyton Gendron faced state and federal charges. He pleaded guilty to all the state charges and was sentenced to 11 life sentences without the possibility of parole. In addition to the murder charges, Peyton was also convicted of 3 counts of attempted murder motivated by hate, criminal weapons possession, and domestic terrorism motivated by hate. Since the state does not have a death penalty, the most severe sentence he could receive was life without parole. However, Peyton Gendron still faced federal charges for the shooting. Unlike New York, the federal government has the authority to impose the death penalty in certain instances. The federal prosecutors decided to seek the death penalty, citing several factors that led them to this decision. One of the main factors that weighed into the federal prosecutor's decision to seek the death penalty was Gendron's decision to target a supermarket in a predominantly black neighborhood. They argued that this choice demonstrated Gendron's intent to maximize the number of victims. The prosecutors also noted that Gendron's harmful beliefs and extensive planning were additional factors in their decision to pursue the most severe consequences. Peyton Gendron's trial in the federal case is currently scheduled to begin in 2025. The amount of immense harm and devastation these teens have caused doesn't stop there. Join us in the next video and get to know some of the world's most dangerous teens.